No, but I want to make sure that in my head I have what from the executive's perspective.
I don't know. I guess we're just going to have to
just wing it.
Buckle up and ride this pony.
Hey guys, welcome to Finally Clicked, the podcast where we discuss business, leadership, and personal development. My name is Margaret Smith, and I'm the Director of Operations for Pickett Street Properties, a real estate team out of Bothell, Washington. And I'll be here every week with our owner and team leader, Jesse D. Moore. We'll be digging into concepts and ideas that have helped us both personally and professionally. And you'll also get a chance to hear from local and national experts that we know provide massive value to get to the point where it all finally clicks. Welcome to Finally Clicked with Jesse Moore and Margaret Smith. We're here today all fired up to talk to you about the last 6 years, a retrospective.
Indeed. I am not as fired up as you are. I mean, I'm fired up. Usually I'm fired up. Doesn't take much to get me fired up. But today it's like I fell off the sleepy truck.
I'm sure that'll change as we get into the conversation.
Yeah, just ask me my opinion on a few things. That'll wake me up.
That'll fire you up.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Margaret just celebrated her 6-year anniversary with me at Pickett Street yesterday. Mm-hmm. And we thought we'd talk about it. We thought it's rare for an admin to stick around for 6 years. What's the average lifespan?
The average lifespan of an admin.
How long does it take before an executive either kills the admin or the admin takes their own life?
Typically 1 year. Typically 1 year. 365 days.
Yeah, so I mean 6 years. I mean, it defies all odds.
All odds. Not to mention I've never been in any job for longer than about 4.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So
it's weird.
We thought we'd kind of go over some of the higher points of your tenure with me.
Along with maybe some low points, because, people are interested in failures and what that looks like and how do you push through the failures.
All right. So where do you want to ststart? Are we going to talk about your interview, first interview,
yes.
Which I recorded, kind of, sort of?
You did record it. You recorded the whole personality assessment, which at the time was called the AVA. So we thought we might share a little blurb from that.
You rewatched that. What'd you learn from rewatching it?
I think the number one thing that came to mind right away was that my body language. I haven't videotaped myself in a while, but I think I portray, I'm much more demonstrative in my body language, and I feel much more confident than I look in that video.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I definitely feel like, oh my, what a little baby. And I mean, I was 31, so it's not like I was 21, but I'm such a different person.
And
it's shocking.
So much has happened in that time for you.
A ton. It's weird to think about. Just weird how fast time goes by.
Well, not just fast. I mean, it's not just how fast time goes by, but it's directly impacted by your level of intention in that time period.
That's a very good. I like the way you said that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, time goes by, and we all know, right? Mm-hmm. But people can look up 6 years and have accomplished nothing.
That's true. I'm writing down level of intention because I think that kind of reiterates a lot of what we talk about with books that we read and personal development. Until you look up and kind of reflect, which I don't reflect very much. It's probably a good habit for me to start. You don't realize when you intend to do something, you can pretty much make whatever you want happen.
Yeah. Well, and I would say that you didn't write down, hey, this is what I'm going to do over the next 6 years.
No.
But just by pushing and striving and moving forward, that list created itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm pretty sure when I first started and you did my first weekly meeting with you called the 411, I believe one of the first items on there was to create new business cards for my photography business. And even that was a stretch for me. And finally you were just like, just make them. And I did it. And think about that compared to now, the goals that I have on my list now. It's so different.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting also how your goals change, right? Like photography was a big thing for you until it wasn't.
Yeah, until I realized that like our coach DR reminded me of recently in an email that he sent, it's better to go an inch wide and a mile deep than a mile wide and an inch deep. So that being said, I actually took my photography website down in August, and I'm planning on taking it down off Facebook too, because while I love photography, it's not going to get me where I want to be in life. It's always going to be something fun for me. And what it did was it helped me train my eye for marketing and helped me train my eye for like things that help me with promotion and marketing and all sorts of things. But when I tried to do it as a business on a regular basis, it actually became really stressful for me because it's not where I want to spend most of my time.
So yeah, I guess we didn't plan this, so let's talk about that first. Your photography, your interest in photography, your interest in an outside activity had a direct correlation to me hiring you.
Yes, it did. True.
And that was the first time I realized it. And and what I mean, here's what I mean by that. I had two assistants prior to you. One was a complete failure in the sense that I asked people. I said I needed an assistant. My neighbor said she had a friend who needed a job. I faked a bad interview or two and hired her because I didn't know what I was doing. And she ended up being highly social, way too social for the role, and would burn 45 minutes on the front of her job and on the end of her job trying to catch up with us on her social life, which I cared very little about. And then, so we made the hard choice and terminated her in that position. We hired somebody. We figured out we needed a process for hiring. We found the AVA process, the recruit select process, and we learned it, and we hired an assistant based on that. And she, on paper, she shined.
And was that just you that did that interview process with her, or did you do it with Dennis at the time?
I did it. So I had a business partner at the time, and he and I did it together.
Okay.
And we hired her. She was with us for about 6 months before I realized it wasn't going to work. And that's primarily because she had no goals. She didn't have any strong goals.
Okay. No, nothing outside of her.
She could have wore the same clothes day after day, done the exact same activities day after day, and would have been totally content. She would have woke up in 6 years and achieved not as much as you, to be kind. And I was realizing that was affecting me. It was affecting my energy, my trajectory. I felt like I was very consumed with this relationship problem, that she was not the right fit for the role. So then I started to, and I was really down on myself because here I had learned a new process. I had educated myself on how to hire someone the right way, what to look for. Yeah. I did it, and I still made a mistake. I still failed at it. So the idea of doing this again was not, I was not looking forward to it. And you were the first person I interviewed.
Oh, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, you're the first person I interviewed in consideration of replacing her. And in that interview, I realized you had interests outside of work. And that's when I clued into that. I clued into the fact that you had an interest in photography and that you were committed to that activity on the weekends and on nights after work. And that really showed me something, that you were a driven, motivated person, because people that aren't driven and motivated don't do anything.
That's very true.
Right?
Yeah. I think we forget this oftentimes when we're interviewing people.
And so that was a huge hack for me, hiring hack for me, was starting to look for outside activities from work that people spent their time with, where they pursued a passion or a hobby outside of work. And that really gave me an idea of that person's level of motivation, and which is necessary because none of these behavioral assessments measure motivation. And I think that's super interesting. So for me, what I figured out was outside interest equals motivation. That's interesting. Yeah, I think it's very true. I think, so that going back to photography, I've decided to
shut that down. And it doesn't mean that I won't ever do it again, but I still have my camera, still have my supplies and my equipment, and I'll do it on occasion. But I'm choosing to be more purposeful with my time outside of work, in advancing what I want to advance, which is my operations movement.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and additionally, there is a balance. Like if you were to get better at photography, the financial commitment for that is considerable.
Yes.
So you've reached a point where, hey, what's my level of investment? What's my level of engagement in this pursuit? Does it match what I want in my life?
Yes.
Does it match my goals?
Yeah, and then I've also realized by measuring and looking at what I've done the last 6 years, which is what I did over the summer, what have I done and where have I come from, and what does that look like with photography? And the truth is, I know that I'm more skilled with what I'm doing here in real estate than what I did in photography. I know I have a good eye, and I know I could probably make a business out of it. I have no doubt. But I think I'll go further and farther in this business than I would there.
All right, so then we hired you, and you got started.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this. I was writing my notes down thinking, what did I first think in that week? And I remember thinking, I was looking at some of the checklists that your last assistant had made, and right away, I could see some changes that I wanted to make, and I could see some inefficiencies, and I thought to myself, like, this is weird. Is this actually this easy? Am I actually that good at creating efficiencies? Because the way you talked about it was very different from how I'd ever thought about it in other jobs. Like I'd never had the opportunity to organize someone from the ground up. And when I went into you the first week with some changes I could make, I remember you saying, oh, well, I mean, if you see something, just go ahead and do it. Just go ahead and try it, and we'll see what happens. And I just remember thinking, wow, I didn't realize I could make some changes as quickly. I thought it was going to take months.
Okay, so I want to talk about two things there.
Okay.
One is I am a master of leverage. If I know I'm not good at it or I don't want to do it,
yeah,
I can be very creative in finding someone to do it for me. And so what's interesting is when you came on board, the way I negotiated the termination of my then assistant was actually getting her to agree to train you. How long was it? 1 week?
It was 5 days.
So she stayed around for 5 days, and you sat with her for 5 days. And the point of that was hopefully to free me up from training you on stuff I have no idea
on the really basic stuff,
about, right?
Yeah.
And that was interesting because right away after those 5 days were up, you were happy to be on your own.
Oh, absolutely.
And you saw why the previous assistant didn't work out.
Yep.
And so can you tell our audience what you saw in those 5 days or what your experience was like that made you recognize that you were more uniquely qualified for this role than the person training you?
Yeah, that's an interesting and really great question. I think right off the bat, I saw what you spoke of earlier, which was that she was very content with kind of complacency, I guess. Really content with leaving things as they were, as long as it got done. There was no need to push it or, make it that much better. And that was an immediate difference between her and I, as I'm always pushing for it to be the best it can be, even at that point in my life, because I like to excel. And then a couple of the other things I noticed was the way that I think in my head, the way I systemize things in my head and organize things is very good from a business standpoint, because I think about the people that are going to be using the systems and what's the best way for them to access the information in a way that makes sense to them. It's not just about how Margaret sees it, but how do the users see it? And I'm able to look at a system. Like I looked at your Dropbox and I looked at the files she had in her desk. I looked at the way her desk was arranged. And within a day, I knew what I would do, what I would be spending my next week doing. I already knew. And that's when I first started to get an inkling of how I, from a very young age, even my mom kind of made fun of me, but I would organize my room in such a way that it was just a display. And now I realize, like, that was all preparation for this, because I can look at a space and I actually will organize it so that physically it makes sense that you can move from one side of the room to the other. It was much like that company, Innovatively Organized, that we had come in. They looked at my office and they said, well, there's actually nothing here we need to change. Hell yeah, there isn't, because it's already optimized. So that's what I spent the next 5 days doing after she left, was those immediate changes that I could see right off the bat.
So you specialize in optimized environments?
I like that, yes. I specialize in optimized environments. Yes, I do.
That'd look good on a resume.
That would look really good, right? Yeah. Okay.
What was at the end of those 5 days, because I've described before that assistant was like a black hole of energy. Like literally she would drain the energy from a room. And that's not, I'm not trying to say anything ill about her.
No, because it probably wasn't the right spot for her yet either. Yeah.
How did you feel after 5 days of working with her?
I mean, what I went into that week with was hoping to learn as much as I could from her before she left. And and as I do with anybody who I run into in life, I wanted to make a positive impact on her and have the kind of relationship where after she left, I could reach out to her with questions. And I continued to for about probably 3 weeks after that. So she didn't impact my energy. Maybe she would have if it had been around longer, but I don't really let people into my circle that drain me.
So this makes me think of another conversation we've had recently with another rainmaker and another assistant. And without exposing anybody or giving away any secrets or anything else, without betraying any trust, I find it interesting. It's interesting how we preload emotion and anxiety into the deselection process. So in getting rid of that assistant, I was creative in finding a good solution, a win-win scenario for everybody. And I was proud of that. And that's one of the things I'm proud of in general in life, is finding a creative solution that creates a win-win environment. Yeah. We've counseled other rainmakers and their admin in situations like these. And what I've out of this recent example, it's just so much better when people are upfront and talk about the reality, which is, hey, this isn't working out ideally. Is it working out ideally for you? And if it's just having a conversation, getting things out to either improving the situation or just agreeing that it's not working and finding a way to unravel it in a less chaotic or frenzied way. And so it ends up being like, oh, we're all adults.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't want to force a square peg into a round hole.
Yep.
And it just is something I've thought about a lot recently, just how much easier it is when you're just honest and upfront and transparent and say, hey, this isn't working.
Yeah.
It's not working for me. Is it working for you?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not working for you? Oh, you're looking for jobs? Oh, you have a resume? Oh, okay. How can we support each other in both of us getting what we want?
Yeah.
I mean, thankfully, you and I haven't had to have that conversation.
No.
But we've had to do that many, many times. And any time where it's not addressed or dealt with in that way, it
gets so messy.
Terribly.
Yeah, it goes really awful.
So if you're listening and you don't like where you're working and you don't like the position, I don't think I'd be afraid to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope that they wouldn't have fear around it, but the 95% do. And so I think that I love what you said in the beginning there, where we are all adults and we are all on a search for something in life that's fulfilling and that we like doing, especially when you're doing it on a daily basis. So I think we have to remember that, because there's an automatic thought process that when you're thinking about sitting down and having a talk with your boss or your team leader, whoever it is, we automatically as admin put ourselves below you. And I think whether we know it or not, the boss puts themselves above. And so then you take out the human piece, the human element. We got to bring the human element back in and just have a face-to-face conversation, because we both people really usually do want a win-win. If you're not happy, like, let's talk about how to make this transition easy. Wouldn't that be amazing if it was all so professional and so and that's the thing, is that I think that's actually one of the easiest changes we could make in a work environment right now across all industries, is people could have those face-to-face conversations and make the leaving or the departing or whatever it is so much smoother, professional. Like they could actually even help you. Speaking of training, they could help you train the next person, and there's just a lot less emotion that's negative around it.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer that I don't like keeping people around that don't want to be there, and I don't like keeping people around that I don't want there, for the simple fact that I am directly keeping them from doing something that could be better for them. Mm-hmm. And I could also be stopping the person who's supposed to be in my life from having an opportunity to be in my life.
Yep.
And so I've learned to address those things way more quickly and to try to be upfront about it because of that. Mm-hmm. Like, listen, hey, this isn't working out. You don't seem happy or fulfilled here. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be the source of your unease. Mm-hmm. And I don't want you to go home mad at me because you don't like your job.
No. Yeah.
So if there's another opportunity you should pursue, then God bless you.
Yeah.
And inversely, if you don't want to be here, don't keep me from finding somebody who wants to be here.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really good point.
All right. So then I hire you. Well, actually, can I mention real quick one thing that's different? And you mentioned this in looking for inefficiencies and fixing them. Mm-hmm. What's interesting, and if you don't know, I interviewed Margaret, and that interview went really well. I think we were both excited for the possibility. And then I went on a trip to Montana, and you wrote me an email, and I had to call you and talk to you about it, because in the email you had told me you had accepted a job, or you had been given the opportunity to work with a relative, that it was good pay, benefits, and essentially you were excited about the possibility of working with me, but could I match these terms?
Yep.
And at the time I couldn't.
Yeah, it was $60,000 with full benefits, with the promise that I'd be at 90 in like 6 months.
And so I said, God bless you. I'm sorry this isn't gonna, I'm sorry that I don't get the opportunity to work with you, but I hope that it goes well. And so you did. And 6 weeks later, you wrote me asking if we could continue the interview process. And if I were to just summarize that experience for you, the main reason for you that opportunity not working out was your lack of ability to improve existing systems in that environment. You didn't have the freedom and autonomy to fix what you saw was broken.
Yes.
And because of that, you left within 6 weeks.
Yep.
And you came to a job that paid you less money with no benefits, but allowed you to do what you wanted to do.
Yep.
And you felt empowered to do it.
Yeah, I knew that it was kind of a blank slate here. I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't know what real estate was like. But I knew from what you'd said in the meeting and the way that you phrased it, you were creating a position for me, was an opportunity to just try something brand new, and hopefully with someone that was going to give me a lot more autonomy. So, yeah.
All right. So then you're hired, you're working. Just so happens that I hired Margaret about 2 months before we started our record-breaking year.
Yeah.
So in 2013, we closed 202 units for about $56 million in revenue. And I want to say around August of that year, you started breaking down. And emotionally, you were crying a lot. And you were in my office a lot. There's a lot of closed-door meetings. You were not happy. I mean, you were happy. You liked your work environment. You liked the people you worked with.
Yeah.
But something wasn't working. And I struggled with it because you were new in the position. You were less than a year in the position. It seemed like you were good at it, but I was worried about your inability to deal, right?
Yeah.
And so that was our conversation, as I was saying, hey, it seems like you should be able to do all of these things. And you're like, well, it's a lot. I'm doing a lot, and I need help. And I was like, well, I just hired you to do these things. And so I thought there was something wrong with you.
Because I wasn't doing TC work.
You weren't doing any transaction
No.
coordination. You don't have your license.
No.
At the time, you were responsible for being my assistant and for being a team administrator, handling inventory, improving processes and systems.
Listing department assistant.
I mean, you
That's
did a
kind of-
lot of things. What I didn't know is that a team of 200 that did 202 transactions and that had 7 people, I was asking a lot of you. And to try to figure this out, I called Gary Keller's assistant, Mindy Hager. And
I think at the time she was one of 5 assistants.
And I think Mindy's kind of used to people calling her and asking for advice and asking for help. And I just said, Mindy, I have an assistant, and she's kind of breaking down all the time. She's kind of crying all the time. And I don't know what her problem is. And could you talk to her and try to help her understand my point of view or something. I don't know what I said. But Mindy was sweet, God bless her, because she was like, yeah, I'll talk to her.
Yeah, that was nice of her.
Yeah. And so you guys have a phone call.
It lasted about 15 minutes.
And she called me or asked to talk to me directly thereafter and said, sweetheart, you need a second assistant.
Yeah.
The level of business that you guys are doing, the amount of team members that you have, it's crazy town to have only one assistant.
Yeah, I wish I could remember what she asked me, because I think she was just trying to verify that I was with it, that I was like, smart enough to know what my tasks were and make them as efficient as possible, and that I was doing the level of work that was necessary. I don't know what she asked me, but it was only like a 15-minute conversation.
And when Mindy Hager tells you you need to hire another assistant, that your assistant you have is awesome, but she needs help, then you go find a way to make that happen.
Yeah.
And we did. I didn't know what I didn't know. I wasn't excited about another expense, another salary. So you and I got together and we brainstormed, and we figured out that we were paying a third-party transaction coordinator about $45,000 a year.
Yeah.
And so our win-win creative solution to this problem was to bring our transaction coordinating in-house and to hire a second assistant who would do transaction coordination, and that would then allow you to have help and for me to have an additional salary at basically zero cost to the team.
Yeah.
Like it was like for like trade.
It was one of my, I think that's one of my favorite stories about creative thinking.
And I was very clear with you that this was a bonus for you, that I was providing leverage. I was teaching you about leverage, and I was teaching you that you're going to give this person 80% of your duties, that it would allow you to focus on the things you're best at, and that I wanted you to consider this like a bonus. I wanted you to consider this like getting benefits or having a raise. And you accepted that 100%. And so I felt from you a strong sense of ownership over that position, over training her.
Oh, yeah.
Over coaching her and developing her over time. And
I wanted her to be a mini me.
that solved that. All right.
Yeah, the other thing I would just mention about that time period, because I'm always reminded of this, was when I got to meet Dory Murray in like the very beginning of my career here. It was like 2 months. She was around for another couple months after I started in November. And the reason I always bring her up is because she spoke something into my life that I think has absolutely had an impact. And she didn't even say it to me directly.
We have to give people context. Dory Murray was the team leader of the market center that we belong to. She was also part owner, 25% owner of the market center. She was absolutely responsible for developing my team, my business, coaching me, telling me I needed to hire an assistant in the first place. And so Dory Murray was an instrumental person in our development as a business and a good friend of mine. And she passed away not too long after you came on board, but you did have some interaction with her.
I had a little bit of interaction, yeah.
What
and then
is it?
she was just loved by so many people. So you had told me, like right after I started, I don't know how it came up, but you basically through connections, somehow my mom knew somebody that Dory knew. And my mom had heard about this too. But Dory told you and told someone else that I was going to change the real estate industry. And it was like she prophesied into me. But, and I can't tell you why I've always remembered that, or why that's like, it gives me so much motivation, though. Whenever I'm feeling down or I'm having a moment, I'm always like, Dory said I was going to do this, and I'm not going to let Dory down. So it just reminded me how powerful words can be. And when you know someone's talent, sometimes all you have to do is give them a vision for their future, and then they'll fulfill it. And so whether or not that happens or is happening, Dory saw something in me, and she hadn't even met me. I don't know what you'd told her about me, but she told someone else, who then told my mom, and my mom just has connections to everybody. So she told me that as well. And it was just super powerful. And so that gave me, and a lot of times during that first year and a half, that's what gave me the motivation to keep pushing, was because I was like, somebody saw something in me that I wouldn't have seen in relation to real estate. So there's a reason to stay.
So I think the next thing that kind of developed, or that we had to overcome, was your title.
Yeah.
And so, do you remember what your title was on your first business card with us?
I believe it was team admin.
Okay. Team administrator.
Yeah, it was that before EA.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then over time, you'd asked to change that.
When we hired Sarah, then I said, okay. I mean, I think together we were both like, what should it be now? And executive assistant was the most natural transition.
Now, okay, and I want you to be 100% honest here.
Okay.
At the time, did you have a problem with the title then?
Probably, yeah.
I mean, from very
because
early on, you did not want to be an assistant.
No.
You did not want to be called an assistant.
No.
You didn't want it on your business card.
No.
You didn't want me to use it. If I even described the duties of it, like if I wrote out the duties of an assistant, you would kind of rebel even against those things.
Yeah, very passionate about that. There are 64 different titles for an EA because nobody knows what the hell we do. And also coming from social work, I mean, I just spent the last 2 years prior to that discussing classism, racism, sexism, all of those things. And to me, I knew immediately what the word assistant meant and was going to mean and translate to other teams, other partners, other team leaders, other owners across the U.S. And it would mean less than. It would mean someone who didn't have the same decision-making power that you had, someone who didn't have the same authority that you had, someone who didn't. And so I wanted to be a DOO way before I'd actually even earned the title, because I knew that if I had that title, people might pay attention for a minute and I might be able to grab their attention and then have the ability to talk about what I wanted to talk about and have them listen.
So DOO is Director of Operations for everybody. And yeah, so this started a tug of war between us. Mm-hmm. And I'm proud of it. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of me. I'm proud of the struggle.
And the process and everything.
Because I didn't give you what you wanted right away.
No.
And the reason I said, you wanted Director of Operations, and I'm like, you don't understand all of the operations. Mm-hmm. So until you understand the operations, I can't call you this. Mm-hmm. And it was hard for me. I wanted to scream and pull my hair out because you're telling, I hired you to be my assistant. I hired you. I didn't pull the wool over your eyes. I didn't hire you to be a DOO and then I changed the name last minute, right? Uh-huh. So you're coming to me saying, hey, I want to change the name, my title. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Well, and I'm a very logical person. Mm-hmm. And I prize logic and rationale. I think that
words and definitions.
Well, when people lose when they lose rational thought, they aren't sane, right?
So did you think, question about that, did you think that what I was explaining to you, how I wanted to come across to other owners across the nation, other admin across the nation, did that make sense to you? That when they didn't see DOO, they thought I didn't know as much?
Listen, I never considered you my girl Friday. I didn't ask you to make me coffee. Yeah. I didn't ask you to do my dry cleaning.
But what do you think they thought?
Well, what do they? I didn't care. I needed help. I wanted you to assist me. And there are certain things I wanted done that were personal assistant type things. Yeah. And believe me, I learned quickly not to ask for those things very often. But, and honestly, that was more in the development of our relationship, working together, where you could learn to trust me that I wasn't going to abuse the role, that I wasn't going to make you do, but I was going to make you go to my house and make my bed and empty the garbages and stuff like that. Yeah. Although over time, I think our relationship got to the point where you would freely do stuff like that. I mean, there's a point in time after separation, divorce, I moved like 3 times in 18 months. And you helped me with each of those. Not just lining up movers and stuff, but going to my house and unpacking boxes and stuff. And so I think a lot of the landscape over your title changed over time as we trusted one another. Because I didn't want you to ask for something you didn't deserve or hadn't earned yet. And you wouldn't settle for anything less than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it reminds me of my marketing perspective. And so whenever I'm thinking about how I market something from the team, I'm always thinking about the client, or I'm thinking about who this is being marketed to. And that's how I was thinking. And I realized that now. I knew I hadn't yet fulfilled the duties of director of operations, or I wasn't yet that person. But I thought that it would advance the team that much faster. If, I didn't care if I had that. I mean, what's funny about this is when you did give me that title, I think it was kind of anticlimactic in a way. Yeah, because ultimately it doesn't matter.
I thought you'd be so happy. I thought there'd be tears. I thought confetti would fly. Yeah. And it was, you're right, it was very anticlimactic.
It was the day before the retreat, the first retreat, I think, or the second one, or the first one. Yeah. Yeah, title was a big deal. That was a good push and pull, like you said.
And then as we thought through the last 6 years, the last thing we kind of thought of is that when you first came on, I had my own momentum. The business had its own momentum. It was growing very quickly. We had a lot of success. I don't know if I think I'm proud of the fact that I'm older and wiser, and I can see now that the initial inertia of any business is something you shouldn't take for granted. When you first start a business and when you first start employing proven models and methods, your business grows very quickly despite you. And that's a very exciting time. And it grows very organically. You get to add people very organically. And, we had the benefit of being first. We were the first MREA type team in our geographic area. And so for that reason, I didn't have a lot of competition in trying to find talent, trying to recruit agents, trying to do any of that. So I had my own momentum, my own visibility. I had my own success.
You became you were brought into Gary Keller's top 100 group. And also you got to talk to him, I think, within that first year and a half as well.
Yeah, so that was a very exciting time. And what's interesting is I didn't have a lot of goals of things I wanted to achieve or things I wanted to do in that vein. But I wanted to be successful, and I liked how things were going. And then, you developed in that time period. I invited you into the room on a lot of meetings and exciting things. But over time, really what we've talked about as we reflected on your 6 years is that our success isn't necessarily parallel. You are so autonomous, even your success is autonomous to some degree.
What do you mean by that? That's interesting.
Well, I give you, we'll talk a lot about autonomy, and I think the greatest benefit I give you is autonomy. I don't micromanage you. I don't ask you when you're in the office, when you're not, or what you're working on. And And so much so that you like started this operations retreat without my knowledge or blessing. You know, that's kind of how you are. You're definitely someone who asks for forgiveness more than permission. And you have your own trajectory. You have your own path. And it's fun to see your success. And everything ebbs and everything flows. And my point is that it's not like you stood on my coattails, right, with my success, and we shared this success parallel. I had my path and my journey. I had my mistakes to make and my lessons to learn. I had my successes and my triumphs. And your journey is your journey. And it's been, you've made mistakes and you've had successes and you've had things that you failed at and continue to fail at as you strive for and try to figure out what you want. And I just think it's interesting over the last 6 years how we've both changed and how we're at different places. I feel like I'm a little bit older than you. Not a lot, but enough to maybe feel like I'm at a different point on the algorithm. And that I take a lot of pride in the fact that we've had a relationship for 6 years, with this point probably being most important in regards to that. And what I mean by that is that it'd be easy to stay on a team that was 100% successful all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Breaking records. No one ever left. There's no turnover. You know, like it's just a party all the time. That's an easy team to stay on. Truth is, it hasn't been that way the past few years. It's been hard. We've lost. Initially, we had 0 turnover. That's not realistic. If you own a business, you better fall in love with people.
Yeah.
Leaving and coming and going and letting people go. It's just part of the business. You can't avoid it. And that's where we're at now. We understand that. We understand that recruiting is a constant, that hiring is a constant, that letting people go is a constant. And that's not how it was at first.
No.
And so my point is that it's been a tumultuous journey, and I'm honored that we've made it together. I love your success. I love the niche you've carved out in your space. But mostly I just love that you get to be you, and that's what people are attracted to. And that's neat to see. And I think if I can take credit for anything, which I can't, it would only be for creating a space where you could 100% feel like you had permission to be you.
Yeah. No, I think you can absolutely take credit for that. Totally. I mean, that's whether, I think sometimes I have to remind you of the things that you created in the beginning that gave people the opportunity to be themselves and to succeed. And it's up to them to do it. And I chose to do it. So you created the environment at the office. You created the environment when you took me to conferences, when you put me in different rooms. I always just said yes. And so there were many events at different conferences where maybe you had like a meeting at somebody's house or a dinner with a group, and I didn't have to go, but you'd offer if I wanted to go, I could go, and I always said yes. And so it's always been, you create the space, it's my decision. I've just always accepted, because I think it's stupid to say no, to be honest. If you're someone that wants to like develop to your highest ability, I think you have to have a yes mentality around some stuff like that you may not think would have a direct impact. Like, I think a lot of people in the beginning probably weren't sure why you were bringing me some places, or why, if you really saw the ROI on that, having me away from my desk. And I think you have seen the ROI after the compound effect of the years of doing that. So,
well, don't you think, as I look back, it was unique for me to bring you places? I didn't see.
Yeah. Other people didn't bring their admin.
Right.
No.
And to me, I was a hack. It was a hack for me because I knew you were delightful and socially engaging. And I hired you because you're a bright ball of energy. So why wouldn't I bring that ball of energy with me, right? And then you have an impact on the room and the space. And Yeah. We've been, I think what we're best, I think we probably have each other's back more than anybody. I think that might be what we're best at and might be the biggest reason for our longevity in our relationship together.
No, I think that's very true. I think because we know ultimately that we have massive respect for each other. So despite doing things wrong all the time, like both of us, like we both have, it's about having grace and understanding that ultimately we want the best. So, yeah, I like this topic because I think a lot of times people think as the leader goes, the pack follows. I think that's a saying in a couple different books that we've read. But for us, it's really been like you had success in a way, and then I had success in a way. And it's like it hasn't ever been at the same time. It's really interesting. So I'm curious to see. I think that will change because I think in a way I had to get to this place. And then you had to get to this place as well. You had a lot that you had to go through.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think about that journey and what's been happening at different times for each of us.
I love it when you try to recall a saying or a cliche.
God.
Like yesterday, we went out as a team for lunch.
Horrible memory.
To celebrate Margaret's anniversary, and she was trying to relay some sentiment or and she said, "What's that saying? You're honest until you're proven guilty."
Yes. Honest until proven guilty doesn't sound right. Oh
You're a liar until proven innocent. I had fun with that the rest of the day. I just started saying random things.
Yeah.
That's why you have to take notes, because you don't remember things right.
I mean, essentially, yeah.
All right, so you have a list of accomplishments achieved over the past 6 years. What can you pick out some highlights? I see a couple that aren't even on there.
Really?
I do see that I think you said you meeting Susan Scott is on there. Mm-hmm. What about the other Scott? Iris Scott's not on there?
Oh, good point. Yes. Iris Scott would definitely be one.
So Susan Scott is the author of Fierce Conversations, the owner of Fierce Incorporated in Seattle. Mm-hmm. She's an awesome business coach, business consultant, and has become a friend of ours. And then Iris Scott is a fine artist who is creating quite a name for herself. And
she would be fun to have on the podcast.
She'd be awesome to have on the podcast.
Yeah. I mean, how often do you, as an owner out there, take your EA or admin to a treehouse on an island for dinner with an author? I don't know if anybody else has done it.
Yeah, getting a private tour of Susan Scott's treehouse.
Yeah.
And we took our artist friend with us, and that was a pretty bizarre and eclectic day.
It was wonderful, a wonderful eclectic day.
So what else? What other highlights from the past 6 years?
So some of the things I wrote down were the classes that I developed and taught, because again, at the beginning you said, I think you're going to teach a class about this. I think you should teach a class about this. And that happened about a year in. I think I taught my first class the next November. And that was the Perspective class for executive assistants. And then and I taught that with you, and then went on to co-teach a class called The Ultimate Partnership with Brindley Tucker. And then also developed the FHA 203K class about the duplex remodel. So all those classes are important to me because they are things that I'm passionate about, and that it totally put me outside my comfort zone.
Well, that seems to pale in comparison to actually like buying a duplex.
Yes, it does pale in comparison. Totally. Yeah.
Not only did you buy a duplex, you bought a rehab, you bought a project.
I bought a project.
And then you sold it and you bought another project.
Yeah.
And then you won an award from the city.
No, I didn't put that part down. Yeah, it's kind of insane. And my mom called me yesterday to kind of remind me of some of that stuff. And then she also sent me buttons in the mail that say no stress. So she must think I'm stressed out right now or something for some reason. But sometimes I forget. And I think that's partly why I like this reflection time, because we've come so far in 6 years. And I've done a lot more than I need to stop and give myself credit for that. So buying a home on my own was something that totally scared me when I first started. I think I cried about that. There's pretty much nothing that I haven't cried about. So I have to like pat myself on the back and, say like I did that and recognize it.
No, you've accomplished a ton in 6 years. Mm-hmm. It's insane.
Yeah. I think besides those things, the other thing that I'm most proud of is realizing my inspiration and then my ability to create communities and experiences for people. Because that's what I've done with Pickett Street, and then that's what I've done for the operations community and continue to do. And I'm good at it.
You are?
Yeah. So that's probably my biggest takeaway.
And now a podcast.
Yeah, which is just a new platform. And I think one of the things I was really excited about for this podcast was oftentimes because you are so busy and you have so much going on, people don't get to hear you as much as they've heard me, specifically on social media. And so now for all the times in the last 3 years that I've talked about what I do and who I do it with and all of these things and about this team owner, Jesse Moore, that nobody's ever had the opportunity to hear from because in the last few years you haven't taught your class as much or been out speaking as much as you were in the first couple of years. Now these people are getting to hear you, which is like, it's like for some of my friends in other states, I've heard them, they've told me, they're like, wow, now I see the other part to the puzzle. Now I understand. I think Brett Chagru said that first to me last year when he had you on the Admin Success Principles webinar. So that's cool for me because now you're a living example, like something that they can take back and talk about and just bring up different conversations with their leaders. So,
well, and that's why we do this podcast, is to try to give people insight into this dynamic between an executive or rainmaker and administrator, admin, director of operations, all the titles that go with it. But to give you insight and then really, hopefully it's the best practices, right? Best practices for the executive or the rainmaker and how to create an environment for the admin to thrive. Best practices for the admin to have success in their role. Because it requires a lot of work on both parties. You can't have, let me think about this. Yeah, I would say this. This is bold. I don't think you can have a Margaret without a Jesse. I don't think you can have a Jesse without a Margaret. Not in its most successful terms. Now, you could, I'm not saying that you need me to be successful.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I need you to be successful.
Yeah.
But we're going to be most successful when we're paired together, and especially in the way that we are.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. I think there's a lot of conversations around, they say you can go further and faster with other people always in life. Like whether we like it or not, the ability to work with other humans is something that we have to tackle and really conquer if we want to be successful. And so I think we are a really good example of how we use the differences in our personalities and our behaviors and everything to be like this one fantastic, source of energy and power. Like the ability, we can conquer whatever we want to conquer using the differences in who we are.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I see businesses. You and I look at businesses all the time where it's like, we should do that.
Yeah.
We should take over.
Yeah.
We should take that over.
We should absolutely take that on. Yeah.
Because we
figured out
understand that dynamic.
And a lot of people don't get to that spot or that space where they understand the dynamic. And if you don't get it, then you won't succeed at a high level. Yeah.
Well, happy 6 years, Margaret.
Thank you.
Thanks for
It's been
sticking it out.
Good time for reflection. I like it. Yeah, it helps me think about what to do next and how much intentionality can do for you.
Yeah, and in regards to this podcast, I don't know. I don't think we're very good at anything scripted or laid out too much.
No.
And so we want to thank everybody for trusting us with every episode. And while we may wander and stray, hopefully you'll learn a nugget or two in the meantime.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm super happy that you'll be here another 6 years, and we'll get to talk about your 12 years with Pickett Street.
I like how it's a random number and not like a 5 and a 10 and a 20 or something. Just
you
6
know what?
and then 12.
Yeah, I think multiples of 6.
It's a good even
Probably
number.
where it's at.
Well, for those of you that don't know, we are on now Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, iTunes, and SoundCloud. So if you could go on there and share us, rate us, and review us, that will help us as we get started here. And let us know what else you want us to talk about. I'd love some suggestions for topics that you're curious about after having heard a couple of these episodes. What are you super curious about? Let us know.
Yeah, and I look forward to being able to interview some people. We have some technical things to work out to make that happen. But I think we have some awesome candidates already.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that'll be fun.
All right.
Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Have a good day.